Joining me now here in studio is Andy Dean, the nationally syndicated radio host with over 1 million weekly listeners and the founder and CEO of ConnectPal.com. That's the world's largest content marketplace. And in Washington, D.C., old friend Richard Fowler, political commentator, host of the online news program, The Richard Fowler Show, appropriately named. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Your reaction, Andy Dean, to the shocking announcement that Hillary is running.
We all expected it. I thought the video was pretty boring. She's coming in very low-key because she wants to say to the media, hey, I'm not arrogant this time. She'll win the nomination, but she's got two fears if I were her. Number one is Marco Rubio, and number two, her health. And so we'll see.
Where does health come from?
Well, I think that it's a serious concern. She's had health issues, and I don't think anybody in the Democratic primary can beat her, but I think it may be a health issue.
What's her greatest strength, Richard?
Well, here's the thing. I think her experience speaks for itself. But beyond that, Hillary Clinton has the ability to really sort of she's going to have to find a way to talk to the American people and inspire their hopes and inspire their dreams. And I think she has the ability to do that. And her greatest strength out of any other strength is the fact that the Republican field is ridiculously large. And beyond the fact that it's ridiculously large, Larry, they really don't have a clear and concise message on how they want to take this country forward. They spend more time attacking Hillary than they do talking about what they're going to do for America.
Andy, on this program just before you came on, former U.S. Senator, former Governor Lincoln Chafee, who will challenge, definitely announced that it's not exploratory, he's going to challenge Hillary. He said that her vote in authorizing the Iraq deal was a terrible mistake, and it makes her not qualified. Now, I know you agreed with the Iraq war.
Right. So Chafee, far left guy. He has 0% chance. What he's trying to do, you drum up sales for your book or your speaking tour. He's going to the left of Hillary, and there's a market for that. It's a small market. And yeah, Hillary will have a little trouble in Iowa, New Hampshire, but at the end of the day, nobody's going to come close to her. Martin O'Malley will do better than Chafee will do. He's got more charisma.
Richard, is Bill Clinton an asset for Hillary?
Well, there's no question he's going to be a huge advisor on this campaign, but he's definitely going to take a backseat role. This is going to be about Hillary front and center and how she communicates with the American people. But there's no question that Bill will be raising money for her. He'll definitely be a strategic advisor and an ally, but you won't see him, headlining huge rallies, or you won't see him, as you saw him in 2008, sort of really being the force behind the campaign. And that's going to be one of the big differences in this campaign from 2008.
Let's do a little switch here. What about Hillary do you fear the most as a Republican?
The money thing, and she's got universal name recognition. She's the first legitimate female presidential candidate. I think, look, she's got a real good shot at it. I think her only competition will be a Latino Reagan, and that's Marco Rubio. And then one other thing I'd say, Larry, is historically, since the passage of the 22nd Amendment in the early 50s, any party that's been in power for 2 terms, that what happens is the following term, it always reverses to the other party because the American public are sick of the past 8 years. They want change. There's only been one example where that's not true, and that was Bush Sr. in '88. But historically, she's probably going to lose just because people want change and they're going to see Obama again.
What Republican candidate do you fear the most, Richard?
Well, I can tell you who I don't fear, and that's the Latino version of Ronald Reagan, which is laughable at best, Larry. One, Marco Rubio does not have the experience, and all the same arguments that the Republican Party made about Barack Obama being a junior senator on the JV team, all those arguments apply to Marco Rubio just like they apply to Rand Paul, right? But what I fear the most is if the Republicans can articulate a clear, concise message on how they plan on moving this country forward and not talk about, how we're going to sort of hate LGBTQ folks, or not talk about abortion, or not talk about any of the wedge issues, and they just really hone in on what their economic plan is, then they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. But because the field is so big, and they're going to spend so much time trying to diversify themselves amongst the field, what you're going to have is the same old Washington politics. They're going to do all wedge issues, and they're basically going to isolate themselves from the American people.
Well, Larry, look, Richard lives in a fantasy land of talking points. The reality is that, yes, you have to have a candidate with optimism, but you also have to be able to destroy the other candidate. And Hillary Clinton is ripe for the picking. She's essentially got Barack Obama's politics, and she's got a lifetime of scandal. And so that's what the Republicans will do. They'll run a positive message on the outside, but on the other side, you have to destroy the other candidate.
So you're saying it's going to be dirty?
Oh, it's politics. It's been dirty since the beginning of time. That's the point.
Here's the thing, and maybe I do live in a land of make-believe, but Even if that is true, Larry, if you look at the 2012 election where Mitt Romney's one job was to destroy the president, they were going to destroy Obama on his record, and that's what all they tried to do, and Mitt Romney did not articulate a clear message, and guess what? He lost overwhelmingly.
Mitt Romney lost because he has no charisma. He's very awkward. When he walks into a diner,
He also lost because he didn't have a clear message.
And that, I agree.
What was the message? And right now, the Republicans don't have a message. They're just like, we're not Hillary. And that's the same message John McCain had.
The Republican message is always less government. It's always the same. I mean, look,
no, it's not. The American people don't know that.
What is Obama going to be? On Obama's turn the economy around. What's he going to be in the election, Richard?
Well, but here's the thing. I think Hillary Clinton is going to have to create a day and night between her and the president. With that being said, there is things where she can say under Democratic leadership, we've seen great change. For example, the unemployment rate is 5.5%. The cost of health care has gone down considerably since the president has taken office. So there are things in the economy that Hillary can point to. And there's also things she could say that if we didn't have Republican obstruction, we'd get more things done, like rebuilding our roads and bridges, fixing our transportation lines, fixing our train lines, things like that. And that's what this election is going to be about. Hillary's going to, whoever the nominee is, right, on both sides, they're going to have to go to the American people and convince them that this election is about kitchen table issues. And that's what Republicans don't do well.
People care about the economy, but when it comes to national security, Hillary Clinton is clearly a flawed candidate. I mean, if you look at what Obama's done over the past
that's
weekend.
Not what this election is about.
Richard, hey, give me, this isn't Fox. Give me a second, Richard. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So over the past weekend, Barack Obama shaking hands with not only Raul Castro, but Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela. His engagement with Iran is very sickening to a lot of people.
He's trying to avoid conflict, and not a good. You don't feel opening up to Cuba isn't a good idea?
Well, it's just his mindset is psychotic. I mean, these mullahs have been lying since they've been in power, and their whole goal was to evade sanctions. It's like saying we opened up our hand to North Korea in the early 2000s, and then what happened? They tested a nuclear bomb, and now they have nuclear weapons. I mean, the Iranian goal is very clear. Castro and his brother, they're both terrorists, and Maduro is a psychopath communist, and Obama thinks, as if he's a fifth grader, that if you're nice to these people, that we can all get along and hold hands. It's pathetic. It's laughable.
The language is laughable. I mean, what makes Fidel Castro a terrorist? I mean, what world do you live in? I mean, let's talk about the facts here. For the past 50 years, we've had a policy in Cuba that has not worked. Right now, what the president is saying is that let's change the policy and find a policy that does work. And guess what? The policy's working. Now, talking about Iran, let's be very like in the worldview that a lot of conservatives live in, including yourself, you believe the only solution to Iran is by creating another preemptive war. Bad mistake. It didn't work in Iraq. It didn't work in Afghanistan, and it's not going to work with Iran. We cannot go around being the global mean girls. We've got to go around and have real conversations.
I don't understand why
that's
you
how
said
you
it
create
doesn't
world
work.
Peace.
First of all,
it doesn't. Did it work
you're
in
saying
Iraq?
force doesn't work? Force has been the greatest
Force
determinant
does
of
not
history.
work.
World War I,
is
World
what
War II.
created ISIS.
Did Iraq work?
Well, look, I mean, Saddam Hussein was hung like the dog that he was.
Yeah, but
and we created ISIS.
Come on. One of the greatest mistakes ever.
Well, look, if we had had a residual force there, like the Iraqi people wanted, then
invasion of Iraq
ISIS would never, in northern Iraq, ISIS wouldn't exist.
Richard?
I'm just saying is that ISIS wouldn't exist if we were still there.
Here's the thing, Larry. Clearly, he's making revisionist history. We invaded Iraq, we destabilized the region, and as a result of the destabilization of the region, we created ISIS. It was a bad mistake, a bad foreign policy mistake from day one. It's a bad foreign policy mistake today. And the best way, the only thing that we could point to when it comes to solving the quote-unquote war on terror, fixing the war on terror, is what we've seen this president do. Drone attacks, being vehemently going after Osama bin Laden, trying to take down al-Qaeda. What we've seen from the Republican administrations on foreign policy has been warped at best. They believe you can go in there and just blow things up and solve the world's problems, but that's just not true.
Larry, one more thing on foreign policy. He said that we created ISIS by creating a vacuum, by getting rid of Saddam Hussein. ISIS was created in northern Syria because of Assad's problems with an internal civil war, and then it spilled over into northern Iraq. So the idea that the United States led into a vacuum in Syria is beyond insane.
Let's talk about the facts, right? Northern Iraq was destabilized because you have three warring tribes, right? And the only way you're ever going to solve the problem with Iraq is by having all three tribes come together, the Shiites, the Sunnis, and the Kurds. When we invaded Iraq and we created the al-Maliki government, you destabilized the region because it was only one tribe in charge. That's how ISIS got started, by the radicalization
ISIS started in
of
Syria.
Islam.
I'll send you a Wikipedia page.
Well, let's talk about the real facts. You could go to Wikipedia if you like. There's a lot of journalists on the ground that report about this that have been very accurate.
Let me get to another base. You mentioned Rubio. He's your favorite? Mm-hmm. Why?
Well, look, I mean, I always take my personality out of it, Larry. I mean, look, we like to analyze, and that's what we need to do. But if you look at the other candidates, Walker's a very strong candidate, but he lacks the charisma. You've got Christie, who's a very strong candidate, but he's not as conservative. Rubio's in the top tier. He has all the check boxes. He's very conservative. He's got a lot of charisma, and he looks like a future president. I mean, Rand Paul is very diminutive. He doesn't look like the president, and on foreign policy, people don't take him seriously.
Will the Tea Party support Rubio?
Absolutely.
Even on his immigration policy?
You'll see. Look, Rubio tried to move the party in I think, a strong direction with immigration, a middle ground. And I think that the future of the party has to be an open tent, especially with Latinos. And he is a Latino. And I think, yeah, he'll slide under the radar, but that's where you want to be right now with the election, in the middle of the pack. And then you'll see when they start voting, he'll be the guy.
Richard, wouldn't Jeb Bush be their strongest candidate?
Well, that is completely right. If you look at the electoral map, you're going to need a candidate that can articulate a clear, middle-of-the-road message. And Marco Rubio, besides immigration, which is the only time he decided to be, quote-unquote, bipartisan, and then he ran as far away from his bill as possible when he realized that his Republican Tea Party base wasn't supporting it. Jeb Bush is the only candidate that can do that in the Republican field, who can communicate to both the left, the right, and the center. Marco Rubio is way too far to the right to communicate. And just because he's Latino does not mean he's guaranteed all the Latino votes, because just like every other voter in this country, Latinos care about the issues. They care about jobs, they care about the economy, and they care about a pathway to citizenship, and Marco Rubio can't guarantee either of the three.
Social issues. What role will it play, do you think, Andy? Same-sex marriage, religious freedom, abortion?
Right. So in the primaries, you know, there's a far-right side of the party, which I don't ascribe to, but there'll be a little pandering to that, less more so now than historically. But there'll be a little bit of that, and then when the Republican wins a nomination, they'll want that entire dialogue of social issues to go away, and they'll move to the center. And that's what Marco Rubio has a gift. He comes off very nice, bright. He doesn't have a hard edge, like a Ted Cruz, for instance, who has a very hard edge, who isn't electable on a national scale.
What do you think, Richard, about social issues?
Well, I think to some extent Andy is right. What's going to happen in the primaries, the Republicans are going to go as far to the right with very draconian measures against LGBTQ folks, against women, against African Americans, against Latinos. But here's the problem. Even in the world where they think they're going to move they're going to move to the center, and the American people are going to forget about all of that, that's why we have video. And people are going to find those videos, and they're going to replay them. And you're going to hear folks like Marco Rubio saying they don't believe in same-sex marriage. You're going to hear them tote the laws like that was passed in Indiana, that was a regressive law and a discriminatory law to LGBTQ folks, and it is going to backfire. It does every single time. Remember Todd Akin? Remember Richard Murdoch? Yes, these same cast of characters are the ones pulling the strings and the ones in charge of the Republican Party, which spells disaster for the 2016 election.
Well, I'll agree. Todd Akin and Murdoch were complete idiots.
And that is
no one disagrees with that. I think the one area that the Republican Party is weak is social issues, and it proves it time and time again. The party must moderate on social issues.
You think you'll put a woman on the ticket, the Republicans?
I think Condoleezza Rice will make a great vice president, absolutely. I think she could do a great job. It has to be the right woman.
Who would be your vice presidential choice, Richard, for Hillary?
I don't know. I think she has to get the nomination first, and I think there's a laundry list, a long list of folks who would be great vice presidents. One being you have Deval Patrick in Massachusetts. You have a lot of others. I mean, you have Martin O'Malley in Maryland, just to name a few. But I think there's a lot of good candidates. And hey, listen, you can get a third term of Joe Biden if you would like that as well.
Is it going to be, this is going to be a spirited race, right? We don't have an incumbent.
Right. I think on the Republican side, it's going to be very tight, especially at the beginning, because you have very well-financed candidates across the board. There are 5 or 6 candidates that are well-financed. I actually think Jeb Bush will be actually at the bottom of that pack, even though he's well-financed, because the party doesn't like him. But I think that the general is going to be very, very close.
Thank you both very much. We'll have you on a lot in the next 2 years.